I'm Ira Joy, and welcome to On Courage, a podcast that explores a fundamental virtue for each one of us, no matter our backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. After a career setback, I wrestled deeply with self-doubt and fear, eventually realizing that in order to rebuild my confidence, I had to start by rediscovering my courage. I've been reading books and listening to experts, but I figured I needed to be surrounding myself with courageous people too. And that's why I'm here with you as you listen today, hopefully on board my mission to learn from creative people who have harnessed the power of courage to find success in their careers and fulfillment in their lives. This is a podcast on courage for all those who, like me, long to grow a little more courageous each and every day. Today's guest is Sophie Brabenec, an actor, artist, entrepreneur, and all-round creative soul. I had the pleasure of meeting Sophie 17 years ago when we worked on a short film together. It was so great to reconnect with her after all these years and get to know her on a deeper level. She has so many interesting insights and wonderful stories about her experiences pursuing the creative path. We talk a lot about fear and failure, self-doubt, confidence, and of course, everything it takes to live a bold, creative life. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Sophie. Welcome to the On Courage podcast.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Really appreciate you being here with us to have this conversation. We might kick off by learning a little bit about you. If you could please introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
My name is Sophie Brabenec. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I met you because you cast me in a student film, I reckon, about 17 years ago. Is that about right?
Probably. That sounds about right.
Yeah,
Lifetime
a while
ago.
And that's where we connected first, and all this time has elapsed, and we have now reconnected through LinkedIn, and here we are. And in the course of that time, I have gone off and pursued a professional acting career. I have lived overseas for, about 13 of those years between London and LA. Developing that acting career and getting rungs on the board and having all sorts of wild adventures. And then when the 2020 pandemic hit, I made a very swift decision to pack up my life in Los Angeles and move home to Melbourne and relocate where I've been for the last 3 years. And we went into these rolling lockdowns, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with myself. And, you know, I'd been away from home a really long time. I was kind of trying to find my feet. I just moved into this apartment on my own. I was feeling pretty lonely, pretty lost in the world. And to kind of cut a few beats out of the story, I discovered an opportunity to get on board with this social enterprise called Renew Australia. And they were all about opening or giving artists or startup businesses an opportunity to fill empty shop spaces and kind of roll out an idea and give young entrepreneurs, artists an opportunity to kind of flex their ideas and do that with low overheads. And so when I'd been in LA and acting and pursuing this creative path, for me, more often than not, I always had to have a side hustle or 3 side hustles. You know, I was working all sorts of jobs. And one of those side hustles was a plant business that I'd developed in the last year or so of being in LA. Indoor plants and these kind of mounted hanging plants that you have on your wall, plants that can live on wood and grow and evolve. And so when we were in lockdown, lots of people were getting into indoor plants because everyone was living indoors. And I was here kind of scratching at the walls thinking, what can I do with myself? And I started up this plant business. I was kind of slinging plants, like bootlegging plants out of my, lounge room or from my porch, and trying to be, super COVID safe, and putting up like little makeshifty signs on poles, like where I knew people were walking, because everyone was walking, because we were like, in this 5K ring of steel, that we could go out and exercise for 2 hours a day or whatever the limits were. And then I found this opportunity to open a shop, and I thought, I'm gonna give this a go. And I put my proposal in, and one thing led to another. So for the last 2 years, I have run an indoor plant shop in St Kilda, which is an area that I've kind of grown up in. I've done this like big full circle and come back to my roots. I've had the most amazing experience doing that. I met a wonderful man who was opening a shop at the same time, a clothing business, under the Renew Australia banner as well, 5 doors up from me. We fell in love, and now we're pregnant, and potentially days, hours, weeks away from having our first child. So that's kind of been my accelerated journey since I met you. But I'm a creative, and I suppose an entrepreneur, which feels wild saying that, but I have that entrepreneurial spirit. I'm a bit of a hustler, a bit of a joker, a definite explorer, and a curious cat, and soon to be first time mum.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you for the sort of rundown on the last 17
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
I think the common thread through all of that is your, as you said before, your creativity, even down to creating a new human, which is so, so amazing. And I think that it's interesting that, we haven't reconnected for, quite some time, but I can feel that that's just everything you've done, over those last 17 years. It is how I remember, it reflects how I remember you to be, just someone so full of life, a go-getter with a creative spirit. So I'm interested to dig deeper and get to know you on a level that I guess we didn't really get to know each other back then, because I was at uni and it was a very quick project that we worked on. But if I can take you back a little before that time, maybe to your childhood or even adolescence, were there any
yeah.
significant moments or experiences that first ignited your passion for what you do now, or even for, whether it's your acting career or entrepreneurship? Were there any little things that were hinting that this was a possible pathway for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm an only child, so I think I spent a lot of time on my own, kind of playing with myself in the garden, imagining that, like kind of like role playing, as I think all kids do, in different ways, and just kind of being on my own, and exploring my creativity. I definitely have always loved imagination, play, imagining that I'm in different worlds. Uh, as a really young kid, I loved to create kind of mixtapes. I had a keyboard and this little sunroom in our apartment that I used to go out to and, you know, talk into a little bit like I was a radio host, and kind of jam out a little bit on my keyboard. And I was primarily raised by my mum and my grandmother, who were super theatrical. My mum was actually an actress when I was younger. She trained at the same drama school as me, but maybe like 30 years prior. And my grandmother was also quite theatrical and creative. She was a writer and a poet. So I grew up with these two women that really encouraged a love of the arts and nature and beauty and expression. I have really fond memories of reading poetry with my grandma, kind of sitting on her lap and reading these classics, and then getting up and doing little recitals that are such warm memories. You know, they're such beautiful moments. So these intimate moments between us that she really reveled in, that kind of, you know, was an extension of her to me. My mum went on these epic overseas adventures at a young age, and all through the course of her life. So I've kind of had her stories and her ability to storytell in a really beautiful and descriptive manner infiltrate, you know, my life. So I think all of these things were really strong influences. And I just think back as well. So in terms of like acting, I feel like I've always done performance. It's probably something that's always been encouraged. It's kind of just something that I have done or dabbled with, you know, whether that's writing in journals, which, you know, a journaling practice is something I've done since I reckon I was probably 10 years of age, and still carry on to this day. Um, and music and poetry and all these things I just feel good, you know, so I've just kind of done them. And in school, I did some outside speech and drama classes, and I just have this amazing memory that's just one of those things that stick out, where I was in the speech and drama exam, and it was an imagination exercise where I had to, it was just me and the examiner, who was my drama teacher, Sue Saxon, who was an absolute legend, this lady. And I couldn't tell you anything else about speech and drama, but I remember I did this imagination improvised exercise where I had a wooden treasure chest and I opened it and it was full of bubbles, and each bubble was an object that I was describing. And I was so committed to this performance or this imagination exercise that it was like I enchanted myself. I put myself in such a place of absolute magic and like belief that I was seeing these things so vividly that it almost brings tears to my eyes. It was just, it was the ultimate kind of like, I don't know, like higher level experience. And I think about improvised games that we would play in drama class of like, you know, one person would get into the center and they'd be like, what are you doing? You're brushing your teeth. And then the next person would come in and have to act out brushing your teeth. And then the next person say, what are you doing? Say, I'm skiing. And the next person have to say skiing. I could have played those games till the cows came home. And even in later life, I found when I lived in LA a really strong and amazing community in the improv comedy world, and so in my last kind of 4 or 5 years in LA, I was always doing improv as much as I could, and we would play those kinds of games, you know, to warm you up and to connect as an ensemble and stuff. And so I think all these things just like have stuck with me, and that have kind of sparked the fire or the joy or the inspiration in me. And so they have kind of led me to being an actor. They've led me to wanting to travel overseas. They've led me to wanting to share stories, whether that's, you know, right now with you or through creating blogs or whatever it is.
It's so beautiful to hear that you had such a supportive foundation to be creative, to be free, to feel the freedom to be creative. And I think, you know, I feel that resonates with me as well. I'm so grateful to my parents for allowing me to do that as well. I remember writing poetry and little drawings and scribbles growing up, and music was always a big part of my life. So I I relate to that. Did you sense at all when you were growing up, going to school, that you were different in that way, or did you have friends that were very much in similar path in terms of being free to feel creative? Or did you ever recognize that maybe you were a bit different?
In terms of creativity, no. I like it. Sometimes I felt different for other reasons. Like I didn't grow up with my dad, or like being an only child in a family um, where my mum's got there's six siblings. She's one of six, and I have a whole bunch of cousins that I'm super close to. And sometimes I'd feel different because everyone else had brothers and sisters, and I didn't. But in terms of creativity, I think my family probably, as a result of my grandmother's, direction
Mm,
and the vibrant, theatrical, colorful, expressive woman that she was, there was a lot of creativity in our
mm.
family. And I grew up kind of dancing in the lounge room with my cousins and putting on little performances. And somehow in my mind, I'm like, oh, didn't everybody do that? But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is probably, as you said, it really shaped you and influenced kind of where you took your, I suppose, career, because you were so encouraged to do it and to not have the fear around it. Because I grew up with some young people that, or my classmates, for example, that were kind of steered in the direction of more traditional careers, that they weren't even
Hmm.
allowed to apply to do a media course or a drama course because their parents wanted them to get a stable job. So it's amazing that that has a big
Well,
impact on how you navigate your life. So yeah, I'm so grateful that to hear that you were given that encouragement growing up, and that eventually led you to pursue a career in LA, which I'm so excited to hear about, because that happened after we worked together.
yeah.
So how did that come about, and do you have memories of how you felt when you first moved there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember like, yeah, like yesterday. I mean, I really struggled to know what I wanted to do. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be an actor when I grow up. Again, it was just something that I did. It was just fun. It was just play. It was just kind of a part of what happened at school. And I ended up at kind of an alternative high school. I changed high schools a few times. Um, I had a pretty kind of turbulent um, teenage life, and went a little bit off the rails. Ended up at this amazing alternative school that really they fostered freedom and expression, and it was I'd come from being in a private school system that was, to me, felt very stifling, and then I ended up at a college that was all sorts of characters that treated you like you were at college. There weren't bells that rang to tell you when class came in. There was a lot of responsibility on your head, which I really liked, but they also had a very strong drama program. Um, and so I kind of did it there. And then I went to uni, not really knowing what I wanted to do, and took theatre and drama there and just kind of did it. And then I got to a point where I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't have a direction with this arts humanities course that I was doing. One of my best friends had moved overseas, and I thought, I'm going to go to the UK and, take advantage of this Australian work visa and go try and have some of these adventures that my mum's kind of, raised me on, and, see what happens. So I did that and took that felt like a leap of faith. I think I was all of 18. I remember my first day getting off the tube in London and hearing Jamaican accents in Kilburn, this northern suburb. And that was, excuse me, kind of like my entryway into this new magical world. And I had all sorts of amazing travels and adventures and worked all sorts of jobs and just, was living life there. And then I ended up on the island of Malta, which is in the Mediterranean, if people are not familiar with it. And I went there primarily because my mum had never been there, and mum's been to lots of places. And she was like, it's a place that I'd love to go. And there's a whole story that would, be like a half hour unraveling. But the long story short is that at the time, the film Gladiator was being made, Ridley Scott's Gladiator
Yeah.
film. And I heard about it, and I was kind of running out of money, and someone said to me, they're looking for extras on the film. And I was
Oh.
like, well, cool. I didn't know what Gladiator was. I didn't know who Ridley Scott was. I think I thought it was like that, like that action reality show, where people are gladiators and
Oh
beat
my
each over the
goodness.
head.
From the
So
90s, I
obstacle
remember.
courses. Yes. So I was like, I'll go down and get a piece of this, like whatever. And oh man, I mean, there's so much I could say about this, and I look back to this person because I had, it seems like, no fear and a gift of the gab, but I walked in and asked for extra work. They kind of said, fill this form in, come back. I didn't hear from them. I went back down and I was like, listen, like, I'm running out of money type thing. Like, you either need to, give me a job or I got to bounce type thing. And on this second trip down to the studio kind of lot in Malta, I befriended the security guard on the gate, who was this girl who was about the same age as me. And she had a caravan at the front. She kind of said, do you want to come in for a coffee? And then I was sitting there chatting with her, and she'd also lived in London and she was Maltese. Her family had relocated back to Malta. So we were vibing and whatever. And this guy came in, production had started, and he came in with a security list of like all the people that were going to be going in and out from production the next day. And I don't know exactly what I said, but I stood up and said, I'm Sophie Brabenec. I'm an Australian traveller. I've just got work as an extra, but I'm looking for more work. So I don't know if you're looking for people, but, I'm here and I'm available. And he said, we're looking for people to work in wardrobe, or there could be, something here. Like, have you had any experience? And I was like, oh, yeah, I've, blah, 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 blah. I don't know, referencing like some year 12 production I worked on or like whatever I was pulling out of my hat. And I ended up getting a job working on Gladiator for maybe about 6 weeks. And I have to show you, Ira, hang on, because it's just here because I've been sorting through all this stuff. I've actually got photographs and an article because I sold my story to Woman's Day.
Oh my goodness.
Look at this. And I found the article.
Oh,
Look, worshipping at crow's feet. And then look at these. These are my photographs from working on Gladiator.
wow. That is a
Like,
story
there's a whole...
for the history books.
Yeah, that's me in the wardrobe department.
That is so cool.
So I worked on Gladiator, on the final scenes, like the big arena scenes. It was out of this world. I had ended up staying in like this abandoned nursing home. It's going to sound wackadoodle, but I met some people and I'm staying in this abandoned nursing home that's this huge, like, complex that's got 2 wings, and in the middle is a massive theatre with a huge stage, and the doors were these massive wooden doors that I'd get to, and I was staying there free. And then the couple that I'd met, there was another couple that was living on the other side of the building, but it was very scary, this place. And it had broken windows and stray cats, and there might have been a gas stove that worked downstairs. There was no shower. There was a faucet that ran out the side of the wall with cold water. And I tell you all of this because my calls to work on the film were like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. starts. And so I was having no sleep. I was getting up in the middle of the night. I don't think there was electricity, or maybe there was, but I was having this cold shower under this faucet and then getting ready to be picked up to go to set. And I had never been so excited in my life to go to work. And that's when I had this realization: if you're doing something that really lights you up, then it doesn't feel like work. It's not, whether you're under a cold shower or getting up in the middle of the night or had the worst night's sleep. I was pumped. Like, I was so jazzed and so energized. And I had this extraordinary experience working on this huge scale production until there were a number of kind of calamities that happened with the film that drew production to to slow down. One of which was that Oliver Reed, one of the main cast, died. So
Oh.
while they were shooting, so that was my point when I moved on. But this was kind of, I think, one of the big turning points in my life where I thought I would love to try and work in this world. And when I came back to Melbourne, I worked on some student films and I worked on some commercials, and I was working in production and wardrobe and unit managing and kind of, stuff behind the scenes. And then I remember I was working on this one student film, and the lead actress was getting direction, and I remember just thinking, just give me a go. Like I
Yeah.
like I know what to do. Like you just try this, And
Yeah.
I remember feeling like just kind of like, and that was I think that was the next turning point for me where I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to give it a go as an actor. I'm going to go and take this seriously. I'm going to go and study, find a course, and go back to those acting roots. I think I want to be in front of the camera, not behind the camera.
Yeah.
I want to perform. And then I missed all the cutoffs. Like, it was the end of the year. I missed all the cutoffs for the drama schools that I wanted to audition for. And I remember kind of feeling like, oh man, I can't afford to have another idle year just kind of bumming around, like I'd been kind of bumming around for 3 years or something now. Like, all my peers were finishing their first degrees, like, some of them were like, now in relationships and engaged, and like, I was kind of freaking out. And I definitely felt as well at that point in my life, like, I'm not in the same train as everybody else, and I don't know how I feel about this. This is exciting, but it's unrelatable, in lots.
That's I'm sure there are a lot of creatives that are listening that are starting to connect with that, because I think that's where the point of difference is. When you're so attuned with your creativity versus those who pursue just the conventional traditional kind of jobs. And what's interesting to me is that 18-year-old Sophie, who found herself traveling Malta, just happenstance, stood up to put her name down for a role on this massive blockbuster film, wasn't afraid and wasn't freaking out. And yet when you came back and started to see that your peers were doing what's considered more than normal kind of things, that's when you start to doubt yourself. Isn't that so amazing that you have all this courage that's within you, but then when you start to compare your life, that's when the
Yeah,
doubt creeps in.
yeah, that's very true. And I wonder if sometimes that's why or part of the reason why I went overseas, so that I could just like be anonymous in my existence, like I didn't, I was just kind of like a rolling stone that was just, out there, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but, and there wasn't people to compare myself to. There wasn't that kind of noise or something, or,
Yeah.
like that I could put the blinkers on a bit more. I don't know.
And that could be a good strategy, I suppose. Just learning to, just focus in on your life, because I think that's where a lot of us stumble, is once we start comparing ourselves and allow the noise to creep in. That's when, we start to have again those, imposter syndrome and self-doubt or self-pity, those kind of things. So I
Sure.
guess, yeah, please take us through more of those emotions you were going through when you moved back to Melbourne, and how you navigated them.
It did feel apparent that I was doing things differently, and I felt at times, even talking about like Gladiator, like that maybe people thought that I was making it up, that it
Oh,
was just a bit like, oh yeah, okay, you all right,
wow.
like
Okay.
I felt shy about it, like I should stop with the big noting or stop with the whatever, and just, I don't know, like get back into the program type
Mm.
thing. Um, I definitely remember that time feeling, a bit out of place in the world, and I'd gone off on this track, and friends had been tracking here, and then people would say, "Oh, nothing's changed," but lots had changed, And I
Mm.
don't think I'd realized that I'd changed, but I was like, "You've changed," and excuse me, these friendship circles have changed, and things in my family have changed, and like life is always changing, right? Um, I eventually got into acting school the next year. I was just going to say, because this is something just that I think served me really well. I had this idle year, right, before I could audition for the acting colleges.
Mm.
And my mum, I think, speaking from a little bit of experience, having been an actor, said, if you kind of want to do this thing, it's not going to be easy. And
Mm.
these are kind of the stats. Like, this is the reality of what it's going to be like. So it might be really wise if you picked up some kind of skill or trade that you could do alongside being a creative. So in that year, I went and studied massage therapy, which was honestly one of the greatest things. Um, I'd always had an interest in kind of alternative healing, and I felt like that was another extension of like some kind of art form and connection. And I really enjoyed it. And that, for the last 16 or 17 years, has been one of my side hustles,
Oh,
and has worked very well for me as an actor. I've
yes.
been able to travel with it.
Yes.
I've earned quite good money doing it, particularly in a city like LA, where people love all that,
Mm.
pampering and self-help and
Yes.
health, and often have a cash to splash.
Yeah.
So I did that year of massage training, and then kind of was, during acting school, developing that on the side, a little bit of a
Yes.
client base and whatever. But I went to drama school, and talking about just being a creative and the emotions and the things that you experience, I realized that acting school for me, I did 3 years of near on kind of full-time training. And a lot of it, I think I felt quite torturous. And I
Mm.
think a part of that was because I was so hypercritical of myself. I was
Mm.
so uh conscious of like getting it right,
Mm.
of being liked, of being the best,
Yep.
of um oh, not making a fool of myself, um you know knowing exactly who I was. I think I really struggled with that. I think I felt like I needed to be some kind of cinephile that knew all the directors and knew all the
Mm-hmm.
movies and
Mm-hmm.
knew all the things, and I didn't. Like, I just, like, I wasn't acting because I was like a movie buff that was sitting at home having marathons. I was acting because it was fun and made me
Yes.
feel good. And,
Yes.
I saw other people doing it and they were having fun, and that made
Yeah.
me feel good.
Yes.
Um, but it was a kind of torturous 3 years. And it was competitive. The school was competitive. They culled
Mm.
at the end of every year. So there was kind of this, like, I felt like I was in a race to get to the next year. And then I felt like it was a race to be like the first person out that was booking a job and was being validated by the industry. And
Mm.
there there was a lot of that really weighed heavy on my mind and became quite inhibiting.
Yep.
Like, it really stopped me from being able to like have the beautiful magical moments like I described as a kid, being in that room in
Yes.
that imagination exercise where I
Yes.
was just fully committed and not having a voice like going, you're doing it wrong. What are they doing?
Mm.
And people, what was that face she just made? She doesn't like, whatever it is.
I definitely felt that kind of, yeah, competitiveness and pressure as well, because I was a cinema major at uni. And, often held shame about liking mainstream movies. Every time, in
Right.
in our classroom, what's
Yes.
your favorite film? I'd have to quickly think of
Oh, you
something
relate.
that, would make me seem as if I was, as you said, a cinephile, or a little bit, more elite. He was a bit more elitist, in terms of
Yes.
my taste. And so I'm here saying, I love Amelie as a film, when I
Yep.
really just love, I don't know, Grease the musical, or whatever it was. So I totally hear
I
what
can
you're
so relate
saying.
to that.
Yeah. And I think um, that we're sometimes our own enemies, like within the creative, or creatives, and creators peer on peer. We kind of, make those judgments on each other, when, as you said, it should be like childhood, where you are free to explore and to play and imagine whatever lights you up, as you said. So I think that's an important
Yeah.
thing to note.
Isn't that's so interesting? Because I felt the exactly what you said, like that, the mainstream or the silly kind of, film in my mind that I was classifying. I'm like, I can't say that. That seems dumb. Uh, or even like, I don't know who they're talking about. I don't know who that director is. I don't know who that Australian
Mm,
playwright is. And as I've gotten older, and it's definitely something that I'm really still trying to develop, is being okay to say, I'm sorry, I have no idea who you're talking
yes.
about. And then even when someone says, what? Like, how do you not know
Yeah.
they won the literary prize? And it's like, I don't know, dude. I've been overseas, or I don't know.
Yes.
I've been out in my garden planting tomatoes. Like, I'm sorry, I missed it. Like, bring me up to
Exactly.
speed.
And I think it's all, I think it's the ability to be as authentic as you can. And that's the challenge I find, that as we get older, it's harder to do, because we are, again, susceptible to measuring ourselves against other people. When I'm thinking back to what you said before about being 18 in another country, and just standing up and saying, I'm from Australia, I need a job. How do you think you were able to muster that courage back then? And what do you think, changed as you got older and started to have, more experiences pursuing the actual career as an actor?
I mean, I think there was a definite naivety there.
Mm.
Um, I think as you get older, that other stuff kind of kicks in. The fear kicks in more, um, or just the kind of, it's not your place to say that, or I, I, I don't really know. I wish I could kind of bottle whatever that was in that moment. I mean, I think it was part survival as well. I was traveling and I was running out of
Mm.
money, and
Mhm.
excuse me, and I had nothing to lose,
Yeah.
in a way. I
Yeah.
think there's something that, I mean, I think I have a certain boldness that, has wavered throughout my life,
Mm.
with
Mm.
at times when I've felt more confident, and less confident. And
Yes.
I definitely had a huge period where that confidence I felt like I lost it. And that was a lot, around drama school and coming out of drama school in my 20s. I actually felt quite depressed, and my self-esteem felt
Mm.
really low. But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, yeah.
I think what you said about survival is a key insight, because I find that, a lot of people who are at that point where they're rock bottom, or there's there's like an urgency that there's no choice but to act on it, because there's nothing else. And I sometimes feel that when we are privileged in some way when we are comfortable. It's easier to make the choice not to act.
Huh.
It's
Yeah.
easier not to, because there's
Yeah.
no, what's the point of the risk? Because you're going to risk your comfort or whatever it is, or your current state of things. Whereas you're right, back then you needed the money. There was something that was inside you that's like, I have to do this for my own livelihood's sake. So I think that's an interesting point. And the idea of self-esteem and confidence wavering, I feel like that's human nature. I definitely
Yeah.
have gone through that across different seasons of my life. So perhaps it means that courage isn't something that is constantly or sustainable long term all the time, that we're going to have bursts of it. We're going to have
Yeah.
different shades of it depending on where we are in life. So take me through more those that season of feeling depressed and I suppose lost in terms of your career pathway and your aspirations as a young person, because I think that's something that we also overlook in conversation. We talk a lot about success, especially as creatives. It's one of the things that I guess it's part of the ego. You always present yourself with all of these wonderful achievements that you've had, whether it's films that you've worked on or awards and whatnot. But what about the failures? Like, how do we navigate that? Because I think failure is inevitable. It's on the way journey to success.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear more about that period in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was a long period. I feel like it was almost a decade um, of just trying to work out who I was and feeling really, really unsure what my voice was, how I should be, who I should be, how I like down to how I should talk, how I should present in the world, what I should share, what I shouldn't. I was just so self-conscious, which seems so, I mean, it's so against being a performer, and so the struggle was real, and I mean, there was other stuff going on in my life at the time, in that my dad, who I hadn't grown up with, I decided I wanted to meet at 21. So I started navigating a new kind of relationship with this man who was my father, and also connecting with half siblings. So there was lots of stuff there. I think trying to work out where I fit into this Melbourne and where friends were at. And it was just a really hard time. And I think trying to develop my creative voice, I had all these ideas and kind of aspirations, and I didn't know where to put them. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who to call on. I didn't get an agent out of drama school. That felt like a real failure. And, I think there were 8 of us that graduated, and maybe half of the people got agents and half of us didn't. And I was one of them. And I think everything just felt really overwhelming. And I think as a creative, and I think we touched on this when we first spoke on the phone, like it's very hard to know, like, where do you start? How do you, like, if you want to make a short film, like, oh, I've got this idea about a scene I'd love to shoot. How on God's earth do you do that? Like, that's kind of a big production, or it can feel like a big production.
Yeah.
And then if you're struggling with feeling confident about it, then it's very easy to kind of backpedal and talk yourself out of it, and like, oh, it's a stupid idea and no one would want to do
Yes.
it, and I don't have the money to do it, and whatever. When there's actually, it's like with everything, you've just got to take a step. And that's what I realized, that throughout my entire life, and pursuing this kind of acting career for the last 17 odd years and things, I haven't had, the huge accolades. I haven't been able to say to people over the course of all the years when people ask me all the time, "Oh, you're an actor. Oh, well, what have I seen you in, or what have you been in?"
Mm,
And I'm not able to say, "Oh, this big film or this big TV series," because I haven't had those opportunities. I have had hundreds of other opportunities and have had some great success and whatever. But in each of those moments, I have really struggled to know how to answer that because I
mm,
feel like a bit of a failure, or that I don't have the answer that
mm.
people want to say, and that
Yes.
people don't want to stand there and listen to me for 5 minutes, like justifying why I have not had success on that level, but all the other things that I have done. And now when I reflect on it and like I look at some of my work, like I started an Instagram page of some of my acting stuff, and I look back at little snippets of my work or photographs from productions, and I feel so proud and so
Yeah.
joyful. I'm like, look at all these things I did in all these places with all these amazing
Yeah.
people, all these stories I got to tell, all these amazing characters. I loved playing that role, all these
Mm,
things.
mm,
They have all kind of been these steps along the path of me discovering who I am as a person, what I love doing as an actor. Through that course, I discovered that I really love comedy, which is
mm.
something that seems like once I kind of realized that, I'm like, that makes such sense because I've been clowning since day dot.
Yes.
Discovering the kinds of people I like talking to, working with, and it's just lots of the things I've done, I'm like, I'm not sure why I'm doing them or why I'm talking to this person or why I'm having this coffee with this person or I'm emailing this person to say, hey, I'd like to be considered for your production or whatever. But they have all kind of just been necessary steps for me to go along the path of discovery,
Mm-hmm.
to build up confidence, to build up skill, to uh, learn about the industry, to learn about myself. Like, it's really just going out there, putting myself out there as much as possible and exploring as many different avenues as possible. And I've done theatre and I've done therapeutic theatre and I've done immersive theatre and I've done stills, I've done print work, I've done film, I've done TV, I've done comedy, I've done all these things. And through it, I have such a greater sense of what I want, and
Yeah.
and it's created a really beautiful footing. But it's been a very unsteady and unsure journey, and a lot of the time I don't know why I'm doing half the stuff I'm doing, and I've been hard on myself because I'm like, you should have a clearer path, or what's my 5-year plan, or but I think for me as well, you can get so caught up in the carrot being dangled. I mean, particularly in a place like Hollywood and LA, where like everyone's chasing the carrot, everyone's hustling.
Mm,
A lot of conversations are just being had because people want to know what you might be able to offer them in terms of opportunity.
yeah.
Um, and outside of that, there's a whole lot of life to be lived.
Lived,
There's a whole
yes.
lot of experience to be
Yeah.
had that isn't just the hustle, and that is to do with for me, self-development and, observing life, so I can reflect that back in my life, channeling my struggles and pain and heartaches and setbacks and joys and adventures and all of this into my work.
Mm.
Um,
Well, that's what being an artist is, isn't
yeah,
it? Oh, well, thank you so much
yeah,
for being, vulnerable, and transparent about your journey because again, like I said, I feel like we don't talk about the process enough. And as you were alluding to then, learning to honor the process as you're discovering, as you're developing new skills, it actually helps you reframe what success means to you. because that's
Yeah.
something I'm feeling challenged by in this season, because especially with how I suppose the entertainment industry has evolved, it has become very much about the commercial things, whether it's profit or branding and marketing and all those things, where the artistry and the reason why we choose to do these things gets lost, because we're hesitating to honor the process because we're so fixated on the outcome. Am
Yeah.
I going to be able to say to other people, this is the movie that I did? It's almost like people expect tangible outcomes because that's what non-creative people, that's how it makes sense to them. If you're an
Mm.
actor, well, what have I seen you in? That's the only way they can access what being an actor is. It's the only way they understand it. Whereas for you, it's such a deeper thing, right? It's a spiritual experience. It's that joy, that love that comes from performing. So, I really would love if more creatives like you're doing right now would be more open about the process, shine a
Yeah.
light on, what actually goes on as someone pursuing an acting career. And I think, by what you've shared with me so far, is you have achieved success.
Oh,
This wonderful life and all of the experiences and all of the inner work that you've done through pursuing your creativity is success.
yeah.
Whether or not, people kind of see it through that very narrow lens of all of the accolades and all that kind of things. So I really loved hearing that there was that struggle, but then you've owned it. I think honoring the
Yeah.
struggle is a part of it.
Absolutely.
So I think you've already touched on a few things, in terms of you just going out there and exploring, different aspects of creativity and learn, trying to skill up and, get an education and all that. But is there anything else that you think can help, a young creative who's going through some of these doubts and, lack of confidence? Any practical lessons or strategies that they could take on board to kind of just keep going on this path? Because I think there's so much general inspiration out there. You follow your dreams, follow
Mm.
your heart and that kind of thing. But if we get down to the specifics, what are
Mm.
some tangible, practical tools or ideas could you share?
One of the main things is that you just have to kind of go into the gym of whatever your creativity is. So you have to put in the work. I realize at the times where I have felt the most sure, the most confident, where auditions or work has been generated is where I am really putting in the work, where I'm going into the gym, of acting every day and flexing the muscle. I'm in class, I'm at home doing um, the work, I'm applying for auditions, I'm um, trying to look at film festivals or things where I'm going out to indie stuff and seeing some indie filmmakers that I like and then contacting them and sending out my reel, or being as kind of proactive as I can and casting the net, in lots of different avenues to see kind of what sticks. But I think, yeah, you've got to put in the work. I think you've got to be prepared that uh, you will highly likely have to work another job alongside being a creative, and that's not anything to be ashamed of, or that doesn't mean anything. For me, a lot of the time in my creative career, I couldn't not do that. I didn't have the funds to keep me going overseas, and I think that's fine.
I actually wanted to, I focus on that part a little bit because I think, like you said, that there is shame sometimes of having to work that second job that may not be related to your creativity, because we're always, I suppose, there's that judgment that if we have to take something else on, that perhaps we're giving up on our dreams. Creativity, I believe, is an undercurrent to in all careers, in all kinds of industries, if we just look at it in a certain way. So you've come to this point now where it's you, Sophie, as the actor and creative soul. It's shaped you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to say, going back to some practical things like that creatives can do, is making the work is really important. Whether you're a singer or a writer or an actor, just trying to create. And I feel like it's really cliche because it's something I've been told my whole career, like, just go out there and like make stuff. And I know, like, particularly in filmmaking, it's not that easy, but, and again, this feels cliche, but it kind of is. Like, you can just shoot something on your phone. And even, like, for the actors out there, I just, for these last couple of years where I haven't been acting so much, I've been focused on this plant business. We're in lockdown for 18 months of the last whatever, and I haven't had the opportunities to act in the same way that I have done previously. I just wrote myself a scene where I played identical twin sisters, really because I just wanted to make something and be able to act. And it was a reasonably simple process. I was lucky to have a friend that had a camera and could help me with some editing, but you could also just as easily have shot that on a phone and just for the sheer fact of doing it, going through the process, and then looking at it back and going, okay, well, I feel pretty good about this, or no, this is not. So it's, I suppose it all ties into, flexing that muscle.
Yes.
And just building confidence up in your work.
Yes.
And getting a sense of like what you like about your work, what you don't like about your work. And also, I mean, I think this is something that I've struggled with, is that like I kind of wanted to be perfect off the bat. And, like I couldn't believe, like looking back at some of the work I've done, I'm like, oh my God, it's so bad. Like I've been in drama school for 3 years. How am I like, what am I doing with my face? But kind of accepting that there are going to be cringy lyrics or cringy things you do or whatever.
Yes.
And just kind of being okay with being imperfect and allowing yourself to like go, okay, well, next time I'll do it differently. And yeah, my mum might be watching this going, accepting that, that you're not always going to be perfect, and that it's, and that's one of the things I even now, like when I watch huge films and productions, and I'm sure we all do it and we critique it and we go, oh my God, that big Hollywood star and what's going on with their accent. So it's like, even the masters.
Yes. Yes.
And that's in, in nature and life. Like it's, things are not perfect, but man, I tell you what, I've gotten fixated in my head sometimes about needing to, to be just right. And I think through putting myself out there and kind of having those knockbacks or looking at work and feeling cringy and then kind of, feeling knocked down and dusting yourself off again and then getting back up and like going, all right, we're going to go another round. And, like it's not the end of the earth. And I always think about, the things like, will it matter in 5 minutes? Will it matter in 5 hours? Will it matter in, 5 days, 5 years? People are not that focused on what you're doing anyway. They don't really care that much. Like people are not going to be remembering this or talking about it. In a way, you're not that important. Like it's not that serious.
And that last bit of advice is so helpful because learning to I suppose tap into the mindset of it's okay. It's okay if people don't appreciate what I do. They're not going to remember. They're so focused on their own lives and what they're doing. So
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
yeah, those mindset shifts I think are powerful as well, and are good practical tips for creatives. Um, being prepared for the rejection, being prepared for the failure, embracing it and welcoming it with open arms. I think that, that's what courage is as well.
The things that you love or that feel good might not be the things that other people love or make them feel good. So somehow just
Mm.
listening to your gut and owning who you are, like I think that's something that it's been a very long journey of trying to like love my freak flag,
Yeah.
or being a bit different,
Yes.
and like going, you know what, that's cool. I actually think that sounds good,
Yes.
like I'm cool with it. I'm cool to put that out into the world. But also the world now is like with social media and everything, there's a lot of anxiety, I think, even with just sharing photographs or captions or things that
Mm.
we want to be perceived as just right.
Yeah.
And it's a great exercise in putting stuff out there and like going, yeah, it's not
Mm.
just right. Um, and letting that fly and being okay with not being perfect, but also knowing when you feel really good about something and really solid in something, and drilling down into that in your work as an artist, and knowing when you've kind of done enough.
Mm. And I think that comes with just really paying attention, as you said, that gut instinct, leading with that and focusing on what lights you up. I think I really, loved it when you said that, because as we get older, we tend to put what lights us up on the back burner because we get sucked into other people's agendas and their opinions and judgments and whatnot, that we lose sight of what lights us up. So perhaps it is going back to that sort of naivete, as you mentioned, being 18 again and not worrying so much about what people think and just doing and just falling in love with the creative process. Because I think there's a lot of learning and growing that happens through the creative process, which you've expressed. So yeah, so thank you for those tips and ideas. I suppose as we sort of head towards the end of our chat, I want to hit you with that big question that I have prepped you for.
Yeah.
But how do you, Sophie, define courage? What does courage look like to you?
I feel like we're on an Oprah episode. That was great. This is your
This is
life.
your life.
Uh how do I define courage? I mean, I think the first thing that I think of is feeling the fear and doing it anyway, taking the leap, putting yourself out there, um, knowing that once you get past the uncomfortable or the fear, that the reward and the payoff, whether that is success or otherwise, uh, is enormously beneficial. In fact, it's essential for happiness, for growth, for mental health, uh, for not living in regret.
Another follow-up question to that is, because courage, I believe, is an important ingredient, one of the most important in terms of achieving your goals and success in the way that you view it. But it also needs to have complementary skills and traits with it. I love a metaphor. So if we think of
Yeah,
if courage as being kind of your main course, so you're having a
yep,
plate of courage, what do you think is a nice complementary side dish to courage, or it could be a beverage that you believe pairs well? So whether it's a virtue, a trait, a habit, or a mindset or skill, what pairs well with the virtue of courage?
Curiosity, a trust or an understanding in yourself that if you fall flat on your face, you'll be able to pick yourself up, that you'll be able to get through it.
I love it. Sounds like a very well balanced meal to me. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, Sophie? Any other, final words of wisdom?
Exploring a creative path is amazing. I just encourage anyone listening that if you have, I think this is something we spoke about initially, but I do believe as well that everybody is creative and everybody kind of has are experiencing creativity in every day in different ways that we don't even recognize. But I think I've really enjoyed my creative life and all the branches of exploring my creativity, and I look forward to doing that much more in the future as well. And I think if you have a certain inkling or feeling that you might want to pursue some creative path, even if that's darning socks and selling them on Etsy, you should go for it. I'm seeing now some peers in later life that have lived more traditional courses and had more kind of maybe corporate jobs or whatever, feeling now that they can explore these other avenues, or that they'd like to maybe explore script writing a bit more, or maybe there's a confidence or there's a security now that they have some money or they have some assets or things. But I just, I think at whatever age you can switch paths, you can switch gears, you can start that career. I think, now with acting as well, I think, the world has changed a bit. And I think, ageism is a bit of a different meal, but it's still, like it still favors the young. But I just think about, there's this Italian woman who I think's like 80, and she became a DJ, at like 78 or something, and has become like quite a big DJ and plays like big festivals. And in my mind, like, she is who I want to be. I'm like, maybe I'll become a DJ at 78, like anything's possible. It definitely helps to surround yourself with supportive people, or, that's one of the things that I think is really important, like a mentor, or like people that champion you and people that believe in you and can give you, solid feedback, whether that's constructive criticism or otherwise, is really important. And I definitely feel so grateful that I've had that, particularly, with my grandma and my mum. My mum's also been a pretty harsh critic at times. Sorry, mum, if you're listening, but, in a way that I think has been necessary. Like sometimes people do have to kind of break it down for you, but I think there's also something that tests your gut and your instincts as well when that happens, and you're like, yeah, and I think that comes with maturity in life, where you're like, well, that's an interesting opinion, but I don't know. And that's all a part of the journey of understanding who you are and who your voice is. So yeah, I mean, I feel very grateful to be sitting here where I am, and to have had the experiences that I have had, and to have this opportunity to reflect. And you asked about LA before, and I don't think I kind of got onto that, but the LA dream was an amazing chapter. I had almost 10 years there of living in this incredible city, and kind of, one of the biggest entertainment industries in the world, and experiencing all of that, and a lot of it has just been really just taking the leap of faith and kind of hoping that I'll figure it out. And even now, and going back, I think you said, how was that first day in LA? I mean, I remember being on the plane and looking down at the glimmering, sparkling waters of the coastline and thinking, oh my God, I'm here. And someone I knew was picking me up from the airport, and I was staying with them, and it was just like, it was so exciting. And I remember it was like February or March, and it was like 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It was, summer was already here, and it was just, I was in LA. Like, it was like, I'm here, I've got my visa, I'm living the dream, and that dream was a roller coaster ride, in itself. And I feel so proud that I made that happen, and that like, there's part of me that even now I'm like, how did I was there, I was in LA for almost a decade, and I lived this life. And now I'm here, literally days or weeks away from having a baby, which is something that I've wished for a long time. I wasn't sure whether it was going to happen, if I was going to meet someone, and by the grace of God, or the powers that be, lots of wonderful things have happened. But I'm sitting here now as well, kind of thinking, my God, I don't know if I feel equipped for becoming a mother and having a baby. Like, here we go again. This is the unknown, and like, whoo, the voices are starting, am I going to be all right? Can I handle this? And someone said to me the other day, they kind of reminded me of times in my life, and they're like, dude, if you've done this, like, you're going to be fine. And so I'm feeling the fear, and preparing for this next chapter. And and it's very exciting. Biggest production yet, biggest role yet.
Absolutely,
I think casting.
biggest and most important role that I'm sure will bring many blessings to you. And I can't imagine how many more stories from your time in LA and just in your life in general that you would have for us. So we're going to have to get you back on the podcast to go through them, because it's been such a joy listening to all of your experiences, because you have such a
Thanks so much.
such vivid memories. I feel like I think I suffer from long-term memory loss or something, because I definitely don't remember things that vividly. So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thanks for indulging me.
And I suppose I just want to take this time to acknowledge you, Sophie, and to say thank you, not only for being so open with your life on the show, but for being such a warm and kind creative spirit to be able to reconnect with.
That's really nice.
I will always remember, and I know it was a brief time in our, 17 years ago of when we first met, but I do remember you coming into the audition room, some little room in RMIT that that I booked for our auditions. And I remember your headshot so clearly that I printed out, and just thinking to myself, oh, this woman is just exudes confidence. There's just something about her that just is so friendly and vibrant, and she's just so confident. And I felt that you'd be a great asset to the cast and to our little film. And I also remember, while I haven't watched our short film for many years now, but I do remember you being sort of the comic relief character on the film, which just makes sense now when you think about it. You just had, I think we gave you some of the funny lines, but you were the friend that we went to to bring the humor out in. It was a drama, but you were there to offer that bit of light. So I think that definitely just encapsulates the person that you are.
That's so good.
So thank you for being such a great example of what it means to live a courageous and creative life, across your acting career, and now through your entrepreneurship. It's so inspiring, and I do hope that everyone listening can feel encouraged by just being just daring to create, daring to make and live a life that's enriched with imagination and play. So thank you, Sophie. So where can people connect with you? Is there anywhere online that you'd like us to direct people to follow your work?
Yeah. Uh, Thank you so much, Ira. It's very nice to be seen through the things that you've just said. But I'll stick that in my pipe and smoke it, so to speak. Yes, Instagram. It's I've got an acting account that has got some of my work and some things that I've kind of made recently. I love a bit of sketch comedy, so that's what I've been doing. From my bedroom in a way. It's just instagram.com/Sophie Brabenec, Sophie Brabenec. And then some of those clips and some of my work can be found on Vimeo and YouTube as well under that name. So yeah, I'd be chuffed if anyone went and had a look or wants to connect, or if you need some advice or whatever. Yeah, I'd be stoked to help.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure to link those down in our show notes as well. So, Sophie Brabenec, it's been a pleasure.